Hello, we are on week 28 and this is Wednesday's math wall. So let's begin. The number of the day is 12. And how many tens are in the number 12? We have 1 10. How many ones do we have in the number 12? 2 ones. Now is the number odd or even? Let's find our pairs. There's nothing remaining or not in a circle of a pair, so the number is even. Okay, moving on. Using our number 12, we're going to look at our hundreds, tens, and ones. There are how many hundreds in 12? None. None or 0. How many tens are in the number 12? We said there's 1 10. And how many ones are in the number 12? 2 ones. Using this form, we're going to move into our expanded form. So on expanded form, we have no hundreds, but we have 1 10. What does 1 10 equal? Let's count by tens. 10. So we're going to write 10 plus, how many ones do we have in the number 12? 2 ones. What is 10 plus 2 equal? 12. 10 plus 2 equals 12. Now, moving on to our 12 with minus 10 plus 10 minus 1 plus 1. So using my 120 chart, I'm going to locate the number 12 and color it in, circle it in right there. So on 12, let's start, I always do the minus 10 plus 10. So let's start with the minus 10. How many tens do we have in 12 to start with? We have 1 10, so we're going to take that away. How many tens do we have? 0. So we keep the ones the same. So if you take away 10 from 12, 12 minus 10 equals 2. Let's do the next one. We have 12 plus 10. So how many ones do we have in 12? I'm sorry, how many tens do we have in 12? We have 1 10. Now we're going to add another 10. How many tens will we have now? 2 tens. And then the ones stay the same. So 12 plus 10 more is 22. Now we're moving on to 12 minus 1. So we're looking at the ones now. We're going to be taking away from the ones place. So if you look at 12, there's 2 ones. We're going to take one of those away. How many do we have left in the ones? 1 1. So the 10 stays the same and the 1 becomes a 1. So 12 minus 1 equals 11. So let's go back to 12. We can keep the tens the same because we're only adding one more. We had 2 ones. Now we're going to add another one. So 12 plus 1 more equals 13. Moving on to missing number. I'm going to give you a moment. Look over all 3 of these and see if you can complete them all now. Go. So 3 plus blank equals 10. 3 plus 7 equals 10. Blank plus 4 equals 10. 6 plus 4 equals 10. And 5 plus blank equals 10. 5 plus 5 equals 10. It's a double fact. 2 of the same numbers added together is a double fact. So 5 plus 5 equals 10. Here we are on balance both sides. 3 plus 3 is also a double fact. It's a number that's adding to itself. So what is 3 plus 3? And the answer is 6. And what is another way that you can write another equation to make 6? Usually I do the reversal, but I'm not going to just write the same one because it is a double fact. So instead, I'm going to write a different one. 1 plus 5 equals 6. And then we're moving on to our fact family. We have a teen number, and we also have 5, 10, which are the part, and then the 15 as the whole. So when we do our fact family, remember we start with part, and then we go to the whole. So see if you can do all the adding and all the subtraction now. You can pause the video if needed. And so I'm going to just go through them because you could have paused the video or just go through as I do it. So 5 plus 10, the two parts, is going to give me the whole 15. Then I'm going to do the reversal. I'm just switching these two spots. So now the 10 comes first, and the 5, 10 plus 5 equals 15. When doing the subtraction, I always start with the bigger whole number, the 15 for this one. 15 minus one of the parts, which is 5, equals 10. And then the other subtraction equation is 15 minus 10 equals 5. And then we move on to whole, part. So once again, we're breaking into a group of 10 and some ones left over. So 14 breaks into a group of 10, and then how many ones are left over? 4 ones. And then we're going to do the adding equation, one adding and one subtraction. So do that now, or you can pause the video. And so we're going to do 10 plus 4 part equals the whole 14. And then on the other side, we're going to do the subtraction. We're going to start the whole number first, the bigger number, which is the 14. 14 minus 4 equals the 10. Moving on to greater than, less than, and equal to. So let's touch the tens. We have 97 and 91. The tens are the same, so we jump to the ones. So we have 7 ones in 97 and 1 1 in 91. Which one is greater? The 97. So the way we read this is 97 is greater than 91. See if you can do the next two, or you can pause the video. Okay, so I'm going to go through this quick. We have 23 and 32. 2 tens and 23, 3 tens and 32. There are more 10s in 32. So 23 is less than 32. 61 and 60. So the 10s are the same, so I must jump to the 1s. 1 1 in 61, 0 ones in 60. 61 is greater than 60. Now put them in order. So right now, you could try to put them in order, and I will circle them on my chart, and then we will compare after. Go. Or pause the video. Okay. So on my chart, my first number is going to be 5. Then the next number, I follow along, and it's 17. And then 24. And 36. Okay, now moving on to our clock. So if you notice today, both of the arrows are facing at the 12. So the first arrow we always look at is the smaller one, and whatever number the smaller one is pointing to, that is what we're going to write for the hour. So the smaller one today is pointing at the 12, so we're going to write 12. And then we know the longer one is the minutes, and when the longer minute one points to 12, we write what? So now the time reads 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. And we're moving on to our fractions. So remember, the bottom number is telling us how much to cut it into, and the top number is telling us how much to color in. So on our circle, we're going to cut it into 2 halves. And I'm going to color in 2 halves of the circle. So we colored in 2 halves, or the whole circle. The whole circle. So when the top number and the bottom number are the same, that is a whole. That equals the whole amount. So let's go to our rectangle. We are coloring in 3, and we are cutting it into fourths, or 4 equal pieces. And then we're going to color in 3 of those 4. We colored in 3/4 of the rectangle. Moving on to our data, our little chart, our shapes. So once again, I always say I like to go to the top, make sure I know where they end at, and put the amount above them. Okay, so now that we organize our chart and we can easily look at it, let's go into our questions. So the first question says, how many more triangles than squares? So before we begin, we always must understand, what are we doing? Are we adding or subtracting, and how do we know? And what are we doing? Are we going to add, put them together, or subtract, find the difference, and take it away? I hope you said subtract, because we're finding the difference. And the way we know that, we see that word more than. Those are comparing words. So let's see which one is bigger, because we always start with our larger number. Is it going to be the triangles or the squares? So we have 8 triangles, 3 squares. So we're going to start with the triangles. So it's 8 minus 3. 8 minus 3, solve. And the answer is 5. There are 5 more. Moving on to our next problem, it says, which has more, circles or squares? So let's look at our chart again. How many circles we have? 7 circles, and we have 3 squares. So circles is the bigger one. And now that we know that, are we adding them or subtracting them? I hope you said minus or subtraction. And the reason we know that is because when we see that more and or, we are comparing again. So we're going to start with the circles, and we had 7 of the circles, and we're going to minus the 3 squares. So what is 7 minus 3? Go. And the answer is 4. There are 4 more. And moving on to our next question, we're looking at how many fewer circles than triangles. So are we adding or subtracting? And I hope you said subtract. And the words that help us understand that is that fewer than. How many fewer circles than triangles? So we need to find out which is the bigger number. Is it going to be the circles? We have 8 triangles, and we have 7 circles. So there are more triangles. So we're going to subtract 8 minus 7. 8 minus 7. Solve. And the answer is 1 fewer. 1 fewer. Now for the next problem, it says how many circles and squares? How many circles and squares? Are we adding or subtracting? Adding. And the word that's telling us to add is because we want to know how many and together. So we want to combine them, put them together. So let's look back at our circles. How many circles do we have? 7 circles. And how many squares do we have? 3. So let's do 7 plus 3 equals solve. And the answer is a 10 fact. And then our last problem for the math wall is how many in all on the chart? Who remembers what that in all tells us? What are we going to do when we see that in all? We're going to add. We're going to add all the numbers on the chart. So like I always do, I like to just go from the left, right, and make sure I cover all of them. So we have, for circles, we have 7. 7 plus, and for triangles, we have 8 plus, and then for squares, we have 3. And so if it makes it easier, you can always move the numbers around. I'm going to move them around just a little bit to help you find that 10 fact a little faster. So see if you can solve that. And what you should have gotten, 7 plus 3 is that 10 that we just did above. Then we bring everything else down plus the 8. 10 plus 8 equals 18. 7 plus 8 plus 3 equals 18. All right, well, that is all for the math wall today, and see you again tomorrow.